Time is the great equalizer, the millionaire, the janitor, the college dropout, the CEO, the mother working 2 jobs, the artist struggling for recognition. They all get the same 24 hours in a day. Nobody gets a minute more. That's the playing field life sets for all of us. So, the difference between where you are and where you want to be. It's not in the clock, it's in the choices. You see, people often look at those living lives of success, purpose, and freedom, and they wonder, how did they do it? But that's not the real question. The better question is, what did they do with their time that I'm not doing with mine? Because you have the same 24 hours, the same hours that were available to the inventors, to the leaders, to the visionaries of the past and present, are available to you today. It's a sobering thought, and it should be, because once you realize that the hours aren't different, only the habits are, everything starts to shift. The truth is, successful people aren't born with more talent or more luck most of the time. They're simply better at using their time intentionally. They understand that small decisions made consistently in 24-hour windows are what create massive changes over time. Think about it, you can't manage a year. A year is too long, too abstract. You can't even manage a month, not really. But you can manage a day, and if you can master a single day, you can begin to master your life, because life is nothing more than a series of days stacked, one on top of the other, like bricks. So if you can lay one brick well, that's the start of building a solid wall. So what are you doing with your 24 hours? That's the question that divides regret from reward. Every hour has a cost. Every moment is either invested or wasted. Are you spending your time watching others live their dreams, or are you working on your own? Are you pouring your time into distractions that give you nothing back, or into disciplines that return interest with compound effect? Time doesn't care about your background. It doesn't discriminate based on age, race, or circumstance. Time simply offers itself to you day after day without fail. The question is, are you honoring it? Or are you letting it slip by while you wait for perfect conditions, perfect motivation, or a perfect opportunity? I once heard someone say, "Don't waste the season you're in wishing for a different one." That stuck with me, because the season you're in, whether you're tired, broke, uncertain, or scared, is the exact moment when your 24 hours matter the most. These are the days that build your character. These are the moments that separate the dreamers from the doers. And the doers are the ones who take the same time the dreamers are using to wish, and instead use it to work. And that's the key. If someone has more than you, but not more time than you, then what they've done is organize and prioritize their hours differently. They've made different trades. Maybe they traded a few hours of sleep to work on a project. Maybe they traded entertainment for education. Maybe they said no to comfort so they could say yes to purpose. We all trade our hours for something. Some trade it for progress, some trade it for pleasure, and some trade it for procrastination. But make no mistake, every hour you live, you are exchanging for something. You just have to decide what's worth the trade, because once an hour is gone, it's gone. You don't get rollover minutes. There's no refund policy on time, and you don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. No, that's not the way real change happens. But you do need to take command of today. You need to decide that this day will not be wasted, that these 24 hours won't just happen to you, you will happen to them. People love to say, "I'll do it when I have more time," but more time isn't coming. Only better use of your current time is. People think their problem is time management. No, the problem is value management. What are you valuing more, your goals or your comfort? Your future or your distractions? Your calling or your convenience? That's what determines how you use your 24 hours. The person you admire, the one who inspires you, they're not superhuman, they're not lucky, they just chose to use their time differently. They chose structure when it was easier to scroll. They chose growth when it was easier to coast. They looked at their 24 hours and said, "This is all I get. Let me make it count." Someone less qualified is already doing it. There's a strange truth that we don't always like to admit, but it's one we need to face if we're ever going to rise above the hesitation that holds us back. That truth is simple. Someone with less talent than you, with fewer resources, less knowledge, and maybe even less drive, has already started. In fact, they might be miles ahead by now, not because they're better, not because they're smarter, but because they made the decision to act while you were still deciding if you were ready. You don't need more proof. Just look around. There are people running businesses with no formal education, people publishing books who once failed English class, people speaking on stages who used to be terrified of public speaking. And yes, people making millions doing work they had no qualifications for until they started and qualified themselves through action. It should frustrate you a little bit. It should also motivate you, because if they can do it, what's stopping you? It can't be about skill anymore. It's not even about having the best idea. The world doesn't reward ideas. It rewards execution. It rewards the people who move, who take the risk, who figure it out as they go. Too often we sit on the sidelines of our own potential, thinking we need more credentials, more approval, more certainty. But life doesn't work that way. The doors don't open for the most prepared. They open for the most persistent. You can take all the courses, get all the degrees, wait for all the stars to align, and still end up watching someone with less walk right through a door you've been standing in front of for years. Why? Because they knocked. This is not about minimizing preparation. Preparation has its place, but when preparation becomes procrastination, it turns into fear wearing a mask. The mask of "I'm just not ready yet." The truth is, you may never feel ready. Most people don't. Readiness doesn't come before action. It grows from it. You become ready by doing. You become capable by beginning. Every time you doubt yourself, think about the person who is doing what you want to do, and remember, they didn't wait to be perfect. They didn't wait for applause. They didn't wait for permission. They made a move, and that move created momentum. And momentum did the rest. You don't need to have all the answers to start. You just need to stop assuming you're not enough. Some of the most successful people in the world were told they weren't good enough, too slow, too old, too young, too inexperienced. But what made the difference wasn't what others said. It was what they believed about themselves. You don't need the world's permission. You don't need to wait until you're the most polished. You just need the courage to take the first step, even if your hands are shaking and your voice is unsteady. Think about the hours you've spent waiting, comparing, second guessing, And now think about what could have happened if you'd used even a fraction of that time taking small actions toward your goal. While you're watching tutorials, someone else is launching their first product. While you're editing your resume for the 15th time, someone else is knocking on the door of opportunity. While you're thinking, "Who am I to do this?" someone else is saying, "Why not me?" and proving it every single day. The gap between you and what you want is not ability, it's belief. Someone out there who didn't grow up with your experience, who didn't go to your school, who doesn't have your vision, is already doing what you've been putting off. And the only reason they're ahead is because they believed it was okay to begin without being an expert. You might be thinking, "But what if I fail?" That's fair, but here's a better question. What if you don't? What if this time you win? What if you surprise yourself? What if the next step you take opens a door that changes your life? You'll never know until you take it, and even if you fail, at least you'll fail forward. At least you'll gain wisdom. At least you'll have motion, because nothing moves while you sit still. You have to stop thinking you need to become more before you begin. You are enough to start as you are. Growth will come, learning will come, mastery will come, but only after movement. The world doesn't need more overthinkers. It needs more doers, and those doers are often the ones who dared to act before they felt fully qualified. They showed up and figured it out along the way. They stumbled, sure, but they moved, they tried, they got back up. And while you're waiting to feel worthy, while you're waiting for someone to choose you, just remember someone less qualified already said yes to the opportunity that was waiting for you. Excuses don't build futures. Excuses are clever little stories we tell ourselves to make staying the same feel okay. They sound reasonable, they feel justified, and they often protect us from the discomfort of responsibility. But no matter how smart they sound, no matter how good they make us feel in the moment, excuses don't build anything. They don't move you forward, they don't change your life, and they certainly don't build futures. You can't build a life of freedom on the foundation of blame. You can't create a legacy by pointing fingers. The truth is, every excuse we hold on to is just a chain disguised as comfort. It wraps itself around our potential and pulls us backward every time we try to move forward. And what's most dangerous about excuses is how believable they can become when we repeat them often enough. I don't have enough time. I wasn't raised with opportunity. I don't have the resources. I've failed too many times. These are the phrases people carry with them like armor, thinking they're protecting themselves from disappointment. But all they're really doing is protecting themselves from growth. Growth doesn't happen in the comfort of excuses. It happens when you strip away the reasons and decide to act anyway. You've probably met someone who had every reason to quit, every reason to back down, but didn't. And you've probably also met someone who had all the potential in the world, but let excuses talk them out of becoming who they were meant to be. The difference between those two people wasn't intelligence, luck, or even talent. The difference was mindset. One decided that excuses weren't welcome in their life anymore. The other decided to live under the weight of their reasons. Here's the hard truth. You can have excuses or you can have results, but you can't have both. One will always cancel out the other. If you keep telling yourself why you can't, your brain will stop searching for ways that you can. That's how powerful your words and beliefs are. Excuses shrink your vision, they blind you to possibilities, they rob you of the very energy you need to change. Excuses are seductive because they ask nothing from you. They don't require risk, don't demand effort, don't push you into the unknown. But they cost you everything: your time, your potential, your dreams, your self-respect. Every excuse is a small betrayal of the future you could be building. And over time, those small betrayals add up into a life filled with regret. What's even more challenging is that excuses often disguise themselves as logic. They dress up in facts and past experiences and say things like, "This is just how it is," but logic without action becomes limitation. Just because something has been true doesn't mean it has to stay true. Just because you've struggled doesn't mean you're doomed to always struggle. But if you let your excuses write the script of your life, that's exactly what they'll do. They'll repeat the past instead of rewriting the future. Some people say they're too tired, too old, too broke, too inexperienced, and yet others with the same limitations find a way to break through. Why? Because one group focuses on what's in their control, while the other focuses on what's not. You can always find a reason to quit, to delay, to avoid. But if you want to find a reason to win, you have to stop rehearsing your excuses and start rehearsing your vision. Take a moment and really think. What have your excuses cost you? What ideas died before they were ever born because an excuse stepped in and said, "Not now"? What moments of courage were silenced by the voice that said, "You're not ready"? What relationships, opportunities, or breakthroughs slipped away while you clung to the comfort of blame? The future doesn't belong to those who justify their limits. It belongs to those who challenge them, who wake up and say, "Yes, I've been hurt. Yes, I've made mistakes. Yes, I've been overlooked, but I'm done letting that be my story." That's where the shift begins. When you stop letting circumstances decide what's possible and start letting your decisions write the future. It's not about being perfect. It's not about having everything figured out. It's about refusing to let your past become your prison. The moment you stop explaining your inaction is the moment you start reclaiming your power. Excuses say, "Maybe later." Ownership says, "Why not now?" Excuses say, "It's not my fault." Ownership says, "It's my responsibility." And that shift from excuse to ownership is where change begins. People are building lives with less than what you have right now, with fewer connections, fewer advantages, more setbacks. But they decided that their reasons weren't going to become their reality. That's the difference. That's the dividing line. And it's available to you the moment you decide that excuses aren't welcome in the life you're building. You're more ready than you think. Most people live under the illusion that readiness is a destination. They think they'll arrive there after they've read enough books, watched enough videos, or waited long enough for some magical sign from the universe. They say things like, "I'll start when I feel more confident," or "I just need to get everything in place first." But readiness doesn't work like that. Readiness is not something that knocks on your door and says, "Now is the time." Readiness is something you step into, not something you wait for. The truth is, you're more ready than you think. You've already lived through things that would break some people. You've already overcome days you thought you wouldn't survive. You've already solved problems, made decisions, and pushed through situations without a guidebook. So the idea that you're somehow not ready to take a step toward your next level, that's not a fact. That's a fear dressed up like logic. Fear has a way of pretending to be wisdom. It whispers things like, take your time, and you don't want to rush into anything. But often that voice isn't protecting you, it's paralyzing you, because the perfect moment you're waiting for doesn't exist. It never did, and if you keep waiting to feel 100% prepared, you'll still be in the same place a year from now, wondering why nothing's changed. Growth doesn't wait for perfection, it begins with movement. You become ready by starting, not before starting. Think about anyone who's done something great. They didn't have it all figured out. They made mistakes. They adjusted along the way, but they moved. And because they moved, they grew. It's easy to think that those who are successful were more ready than you. But the only real difference is they were willing to begin without being completely sure. You've got tools inside you that haven't even been touched yet. Abilities you won't discover until you're forced to use them. Courage that won't come alive until you step into uncertainty. You think you're missing something, but what you're really missing is the experience that only comes through action. Some lessons can't be learned from the sidelines. Some strength only shows up when you're in the middle of the storm. You don't build confidence by collecting information. You build it by doing the hard thing scared, by showing up when it's uncomfortable, by proving to yourself one decision at a time that you're capable of handling more than you believed. Every time you take action in spite of uncertainty, you chip away at the lie that says, I'm not ready. You rewrite your story. People spend so much of their lives preparing for the thing they never start. Always learning, always planning, always perfecting, never executing. Preparation becomes the comfort zone, but comfort zones don't produce change. They produce excuses. They produce delayed dreams. At some point, you have to stop preparing and start building, stop researching and start risking. That's when you find out what you're made of. You may not have all the answers, but you have enough to take the first step. That step may not lead exactly where you imagined, but it will lead somewhere, and somewhere is better than stuck. Somewhere is where clarity lives. Somewhere is where doors open that planning alone can't unlock. The map you're looking for is often drawn as you go. And don't make the mistake of thinking that fear is a sign you shouldn't move. Fear is often proof that you're on the edge of something meaningful. It shows up right before the breakthrough. It tries to convince you to stay the same when everything in your spirit is saying it's time to grow. The presence of fear isn't the problem. The problem is when you listen to it more than you listen to your calling. Every person you admire started before they felt completely ready. They were scared. They had doubts. They faced setbacks, but they moved anyway. And because they moved, they became more. You're not waiting on confidence. Confidence is waiting on you. It shows up when you take action. It shows up when you put yourself in situations that stretch you. You've already waited long enough. You've already thought about it, dreamed about it, talked about it. Now it's time to step into it. No, you won't feel 100% sure. No, the road won't be perfectly lit, but you don't need to see the whole staircase. You just need to take the next step. Everything you're waiting for is on the other side of motion, and you won't know how ready you are until you go. You owe it to yourself. There comes a time in every person's life when the question shifts from, can I do it, to why haven't I? And that question doesn't come from pressure outside of you. It comes from something deeper, something internal that knows you were meant for more. At some point, you stop chasing approval and you start chasing alignment. You start realizing that living beneath your potential isn't just disappointing, it's dishonest. It's you denying yourself the future you were built for. That's why this journey isn't just about success. It's about responsibility, because you owe it to yourself. You owe it to the version of you that never gave up, the one who stayed up late dreaming when everyone else was sleeping, the one who went through heartbreak, failure, fear, and frustration, and still had the courage to try again. That version of you doesn't deserve to be buried under excuses and delay. It deserves to see what happens when you fully show up. People often talk about what they owe to others, their families, their mentors, their children, and yes, those obligations matter. But the one person you'll spend your entire life with is you, and too many people abandon themselves in the name of playing it safe. They betray their own gifts by settling for what's comfortable, but fulfillment doesn't come from comfort. It comes from honoring the life you've been given, and that begins by realizing that your dreams aren't a luxury. They're a responsibility. When you start seeing your potential as something sacred, everything changes. You stop negotiating with procrastination. You stop tolerating environments that drain you. You stop entertaining distractions that steal your focus. Because when you know what you're capable of, mediocrity becomes unacceptable, not because you're arrogant, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because there's a voice inside you whispering, there's more, and that voice won't stop until you listen. You owe it to yourself to find out how far you can go, not just how long you can survive, but how much you can thrive. You owe it to yourself to build something with your life that outlasts your feelings, your fears, and your failures. Something that reflects the strength it took for you to keep going when giving up would have been easier. That strength is your proof. You didn't come this far to only come this far. You owe it to yourself to stop waiting for permission. Too many people sit around hoping someone else will validate their vision, but this isn't about being chosen. This is about choosing yourself, about realizing that you don't need a round of applause to get started. You just need the conviction that your life matters, that your time here means something, that what you do with your days adds up to the legacy you leave behind. Nobody's coming to save you from your own potential. That's your job. You are the hero, the author, the builder. And that means you also carry the weight of your own choices. You can choose comfort, or you can choose growth. You can choose safety, or you can choose to stretch. But understand this, every day you spend hiding your gifts is a day you rob yourself of becoming what you were born to be. You owe it to yourself to stop playing small so other people feel comfortable. Playing small doesn't serve the world, and it doesn't serve you. You weren't created to shrink in the presence of other people's opinions. You were created to rise, to show what's possible when someone refuses to settle. And that starts when you stop measuring your worth by how others see you and start measuring it by how fully you live. You owe it to yourself to stop carrying shame for wanting more. Wanting more doesn't make you greedy. It makes you alive. It makes you honest. It means you're still listening to the part of you that refuses to accept average. That part of you is still fighting for a future worth living, and that fight is sacred. That fight deserves your best effort, your best energy, your best years. You owe it to yourself to go back and pick up the dream you dropped when life got heavy. You owe it to yourself to rewrite the story you've been repeating in your head that says, "This is just how it is." It's not. The story isn't over. The pen is still in your hand, and what you write next is up to you. You owe it to yourself to break the cycle of almost started, almost tried, almost changed, almost believed. There's a life on the other side of almost that begins with commitment, with ownership, with resolve, the kind of resolve that says, I may not have everything, but I have this moment, and I will not waste it. You owe it to yourself to rise above the voice that says not you. That voice is a lie. It was never meant to define you. You were born with vision, fire, purpose, and even if it's been buried under years of doubt and distraction, it's still there, still waiting, still calling your name, and it's not asking you for perfection. It's asking you to show up for yourself, to decide that this time you won't let another day go by wondering what might have happened if you had just believed. Conclusion. So here we are at the crossroads where dreams meet decision, not someday, not when it's convenient. Now, because the question was never really why you, the question is, why not you? Why not you who dares to dream bigger? Why not you who decides that excuses will no longer write the story? Why not you who takes one bold step, then another, until momentum replaces fear? You've got what it takes, you always did, not because it's easy, not because the road is smooth, but because deep down you know you weren't made to just get by. You were made to become. You don't need permission, you don't need a perfect plan, you need a decision, a commitment to show up, a refusal to settle, a fire inside that says, if anyone's going to rise, it might as well be me. Don't let comfort keep you average. Don't let doubt make your choices. Don't let the life you could have lived haunt you years from now. Choose growth, choose ownership, choose belief, not in guarantees, but in your ability to grow stronger through the process. Because your future is not written by chance, it's written by choice, and today you choose to rise. You choose to build, you choose to become. Why not you?